Chapter 4. The Cold Folks Massing. The conical hill was there, and the stone walls of the fortress were there, and King Monarch's sea-beast banner was there, and there was Maeve. Beautiful Maeve riding a horse from the gates of Caer Marlod, and waving to him and laughing, her red hair flying and her green-grey eyes all alight with joy. Her horse's hooves sending up a flurry of frost as she cried out to him, "Coram, Coram Lor Arent, do you bring the spear, Brianak?" "Aye," called back Coram, brandishing the spear, "and I bring guests to Caer Marlod. We are hasty, for the Foymuir are not far behind." She reached his side and leaned over to fling an arm about his neck and kiss him full on the lips, so that all his earlier gloom left him suddenly, and he was glad that he had not stayed in High Breazail, that he had not been killed by Hugh Argiek, and that he had not been drained of his body's heat by the ice phantoms. "You are here, Coram," she said. "I am here, lovely Maeve, and here is the spear, Brianak." She looked at it in wonder, but she would not touch it, even when he offered it to her. She drew back. She smiled strangely. "It is not for me to hold. That is the spear Brianak. It is the spear of Crem Cruach, of Lor Arant, of the Sidhe, of the gods and the demigods of our race. That is the spear Brianak." He laughed at the serious expression which had come suddenly upon her face, and he kissed her so that her eyes cleared and she laughed at him, and then turned her chestnut mare to gallop ahead of the weary band, to lead the way through the narrow gate into the fortress town of Caer Marlod. And there on the other side of the gate's passage stood King Monarch, smiling in gratitude and respect at Coram, who had found one of the great treasures of Caer Lud, one of the lost treasures of the Mabden, the spear which could tame the last member of a herd of she cattle, the black bull of Cryn-y-Nas. "Greetings, Lord of the Mounds," said King Monarch without pomposity. "Greetings, hero. Greetings, son." Coram swung down from the saddle, and again he stretched out the silver hand which held Brianak. "Here it is. Look at it. It is an ordinary spear, King Monarch, or seems so. Yet it has already saved my life twice upon my journey back to Caer Marlod. Inspect it. Tell me if you think it is an unusual spear." But King Monarch followed the example of his daughter and backed away from the spear. "No, Prince Coram, only a hero may carry the spear Brianak, for a lesser mortal would be cursed if he tried to hold it. It is a she weapon. Even when it was in our possession, it was kept in a case, and the spear itself was never touched." "Well," said Coram, "I'll respect your customs, though there is nothing at all to fear from the spear. Only our enemies should fear Brianak." "As you say," said King Monarch in a subdued tone, and then he smiled. "Well, now we must eat. We have caught fish today, and there are several hares. Let all these people come with us to the hall and eat too, for they look hungry indeed." Bran and Teranon spoke for the few arriving clansfolk. "We accept your hospitality, great king, for we are fair famished, and we offer you our services as warriors, to aid you in your fight against the fierce Foymuir." King Monarch inclined his noble head. "My hospitality is poor compared with your pride and your pledge, and I thank you, warriors, for your presence at our battlements." As King Monarch spoke the last word, there came a shout from above, and a girl who had been on guard above the gate called, "White mist boiling on the north and south. The cold folk are massing. The Foymuir come." King Monarch said, not without humour, "I fear that the banquet will have to be postponed. Let us hope it will be a victory feast." He smiled grimly, "and that the fish is still fresh when we've finished our fight." King Monarch turned to Coram after directing more of his men to the walls. "You must call the bull of Cryn-y-Nas, Coram, and you must call it soon. If it does not come, then we are over the folk of Caer Marlot. Well, I do not know how to call the bull, King Monarch. Maeve knows, and she will teach you. I know, said Maeve. And then she and Coram joined the warriors on the walls and looked eastward, and there were the Foy Muir with their mist and their minions. They do not come for sport this day, said Maeve. With his right hand, Coram took her left hand, holding it tightly. About 2 miles distant beyond the forest, they saw pale mist churning. It covered the whole horizon from north to south, and it moved slowly but purposefully towards Caer Marlot. Ahead of this mist were many packs of hounds, questing and scenting as ordinary dogs run of a hunt. Behind the hounds were small figures whom Coram guessed were white-faced ghoul-leg huntsmen, and behind these huntsmen were riders, pale green riders who, like Hugh Argech, were doubtless brothers to the Pines. But in the mist itself could be detected larger shapes, the shapes Coram had seen only once before. These were the dark outlines of monstrous war chariots, drawn by beasts that were certainly not horses. And there were 7 of these chariots, and in the chariots were 7 riders of enormous size. A great massing, said Maeve in a voice which succeeded in sounding brave. They send their whole strength against us. All 7 of the Foy Muir come. They must respect us greatly, those gods. We shall give them cause, said Coram. Now we must leave Caer Marlot, Maeve told him. Desert the city. We have to go to call the bull of Cryn Nas. There is a place, the only place to which the bull will come. Coram was reluctant to go. In a few hours, perhaps in less time than that, the Foy Muir will attack. We must try to return by that time. That is why it is urgent that we go now to the She-Rock and seek the bull. So they left Caer Marlot quietly, on fresh horses, and rode along the cliffs above a sea which groaned and roared and rolled as if in anticipation of the coming struggle. At last they stood upon the yellow sand, and with the dark and jagged cliffs behind them and the uneasy sea before them, and looked up at the strange rock which stood alone on the beach. It had begun to rain, and the rain and the sea spray lashed the rock and made it shine with the peculiar variety of soft colours which veined it. And in places the rock was opaque, and in other places it was almost completely transparent, so that other warmer colours could be seen at its heart. The She-Rock, said Maeve. Coram nodded. What else could the rock be? It was not of his plane. Perhaps like the island of Highbury Azael, it had come with the She when they journeyed here to fight the cold folk. He had seen things like it before, objects which had no real place upon this plane, which had part of themselves in another plane altogether. The wind blew the water against his face, blew their hair and their cloaks about them, and they had difficulty climbing the smooth, worn stone and standing at last on the top of the rock. Huge waves rolled down upon the coast. Great gusts threatened to blow them from their perch. Rain washed down them and cascaded over the rock so that small waterfalls were formed. Now take the spear, Brionac, in your silver hand, directed Maeve, and raise it high. Coram obeyed her. Now you must translate what I tell you into your speech, the pure Vadhag tongue, for that is the same as the She. I know, said Coram. What must I say? Well, before you speak, you must think of the bull, the black bull of Cryn Nas. He is as tall at the shoulders as you are at the head. He has a long coat of black hair. His horns are wider from tip to tip than you can stretch your arms, and they are sharp, those horns. Can you picture such a creature? I think so. Then speak this, and speak it clearly. All around them the day was turning grey, save for the great rock on which they stood. You shall pass through tall gates of stone, you black bull. You shall come forth from where you dwell when Crem Cruach calls. If you sleep, black bull, awaken now. If you wake, black bull, then rise now. If you rise, black bull, then walk. Shake the earth, black bull. Come to the rock where you were sired, where you were born, black bull. For he who holds the spear is master of your fate. Brionac, forged at Crinan and mined from she stone, fights once more the dread Foimure, whom you must fight, black bull. Come, black bull. Come, black bull, come home. Maeve had spoken this whole thing without drawing a breath. And now her grey-green eyes looked anxiously into his single eye. Can you translate that into your own speech? Aye, said Coram. But why would a beast come to answer such chanting? Well, do not question that, Coram. The Vadhag shrugged. Do you still see the bull in your mind's eye? He paused. And then he nodded. I do. Then I will speak the lines again and you will repeat them in the Vadhag tongue. And Coram obeyed, though the chant seemed a crude one to him and hardly Vadhag in origin. Slowly he repeated what she told him, and as he chanted he began to feel light-headed. The words began to trip from his lips. He declaimed them. He stood at his full height, clothing and hair blown this way and that by the grey wind, and he held the spear Brionac high, and he called for the bull of Crinan. His voice grew louder and louder and sounded above the wind's snore. Come, black bull, come. Black bull, come home. Speaking the words in his own tongue somehow seemed to give them more weight, though the language Maeve spoke was scarcely different from the Vadhag language. When the words were finished, she put a hand on his arm and a finger to his lips, and they listened through the howling wind, and the thrashing sea, and the cascading rain, and heard a distant lowing from somewhere, and the she-rock seemed to glow with richer colours and tremble a little. The lowing came again, closer. Maeve was grinning at him, holding his arm very tightly now. The bull, she whispered. The bull comes. But still they could not tell from which direction the lowing reached their ears. The rain fell in even heavier sheets until they could barely see beyond the rock at all, and it was as if the sea had engulfed them. But the sounds began to merge into one sound, and that sound gradually became identified as the deep, reflective lowing of a bull. They peered from where they stood on the top of the she-rock, and it seemed to them that they saw the great bull bring its great black bulk up out of the waters of the sea and stand shaking itself upon the shore, turning its huge, intelligent eyes from side to side as it sought the source of the chant which had brought it here. "Black bull!" cried Maeve. "Black bull of Crinan! Here stands Crem Cruach and the spear Brionac. Here stands your destiny." And the monstrous bull lowered its head with the sharp, wide-spaced horns and shook its shaggy black body. and it pawed at the sand with its heavy hooves. And they could smell its warm body. They could smell the comforting, familiar stink of cattle. But this was no familiar farmyard beast. This was a war beast, proud, confident, a beast which served not a master, but an ideal. It swung its black tufted tail from side to side as it stared up at the two people who stood side by side on the she rock and who stared back at it in wonder. "And now I know why the Foy Muir fear that beast," said Coram.